everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with actor Brandon Firla. Brandon Firla has built a career that spans continents and creative disciplines, from training at London's prestigious LAMDA to becoming a series regular on hit shows like Suits, where he brought complex character of Jonathan Sidwell to life. But here's what makes Brandon's story particularly compelling. He didn't just succeed as an actor, he's also an award-nominated screenwriter who's tackled everything from topical musicals about SARS to selling scripts to major networks. His journey from Calgary to Los Angeles represents the kind of strategic career building that turns talent into sustainable success. And his insights about navigating uncertainty while maintaining creative courage are exactly what driven professionals need to hear right now. Hello, Brandon. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Hi, Olivia. Thank you for having me on this this beautiful, what is it? Is it Monday? No, it's Tuesday today, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I was back in Canada for a week, so I'm just getting my bearings. Yeah, thanks for having me along. How are you this morning? Everything good?
I'm doing well. I'm glad we get to talk. And I've been there. There's been times I've traveled like overseas or long distances, and you get back and then you're just busy in that momentum as well. And you're like, wait, what day is it? Is it night? Is it morning? Because it can be crazy sometimes.
I think I've achieved success just by managing to be on this recording this morning, because not only did I get the time zone wrong, I was in the mindset of being, okay, no, I've got a couple hours to think about it. And then, spoiler alert to listeners, yeah, I messed up the time zone. So here I am. But I love this because it throws away any kind of idea of being like over-prepared or preparing for something. No, just jump right in and know that, and just trust that it's going to be great. The other, more adversity, because success is about overcoming adversity in my mind. I have no Wi-Fi this morning, so I'm tethered to my phone. So I'm beating that, and I'm just getting over a cold. So it's a minor miracle that I'm here. And thank you for the lovely intro, because I feel like you did all the work for me. I don't need to say anything. People can just listen to your intro about me. And so I feel like all the work is done, is what I'm saying here.
Yeah, we could just wrap it up right now. Yeah, I mean, we don't even kind of go any further.
Yeah, but Ben can just loop that intro, and we're good.
We're good. But you brought up some things that I want to go a little deeper on, because my first question I always ask every guest is, to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Brandon Firla? So we know what success looks like for you today, but yes. Overall, what does success mean and look like to you?
Well, yeah, so it's interesting that you say that, because I think success is kind of this ever evolving, almost indefinable thing. And when you get asked to be a guest on a podcast that is talking exclusively about this subject, it does make you think about it. And so I have thought about it. And the more you think about it, the more elusive it becomes. So because it's inherently a subjective thing. And like I said, it's kind of ever evolving. And so I was putting some thoughts together while I was away, and again this morning, and I'm just like, I was basically looking forward to this conversation to kind of complete my answer to your question, what success is, because I'm still trying to piece it together. But what I think I've landed on is how not only how subjective it is, and how one person's success can be viewed as another person's failure. And for me, there's also like a sports psychology part of success that I'm a huge basketball fan. So there's a lot of, I'm wearing a Boston Celtics shirt because they have game 2 tonight. Even though I'm from Canada, I should be a Raptors fan, but come on. When I grew up, there were no Raptors. Anyway, but what I think I landed on is how success and failure, the relationship of those two things and kind of the tension between them, is the most interesting aspect of success to me. Because I think, especially for me, every success or perceived success that I've had has come from a long line of failures that have supported it. And this idea of embracing failure, and in learning to enjoy it as part of the process is kind of the key to success. And then within that, kind of riding this fine line of not getting too high or too low. So when you have some wins, you're like, okay, well, I won that one, but tomorrow's another game. Or if you lost, if you had a loss, you get a setback, something didn't go your way. It's like, well, that's just how it breaks sometimes, and just got to stay on track. So I'm sure what I've just said made a lot of sense. And
no, it did.
Incredibly cohesive.
Here's the thing as well. One, you just showed us which I love, is your thought process and your journey. And I think so many of us we think through things and we sit on things, but we don't know how to articulate the process from like, here's this thought to how we got here. And there's times like I will say things and I'm like, and to Ben, my amazing producer, or I'll bounce ideas off people and I'm like, this is the concept I have. This is like the vision. And I go on this thing and I'm like, did that make sense to you? Or did I just say a bunch of things? And that's the lovely aspect of the journey, is also being able to communicate where you are and your thought process in all of it. So I think that was amazing. But I think it's also the aspect of understanding that there is this barrier and barrier might not be the right words, but this line between the fear and the success and the losses, if you want to call them, or failures and the success. And I love how you brought that up as well. And you're completely right. I look back on things and I'm like, okay, this got created only because I went through XYZ, and those didn't necessarily work out the way I thought they were going to work out. But it all gave me this information and perspective to now be able to build this.
Right. Yeah.
So
no, I agree. I agree with that. And then it's also going back to sports analogies that because we're right. The NBA playoffs have started. So now this is where competition and success and failure and that mentality to persevere, to keep going, and knowing like a 7-game series is a great study of success and failure and how to balance it. And the idea of like margins of victory. What's the difference between like a 30-point loss and a 1-point loss? It's still a loss. It doesn't matter how much you lose by. But if you can kind of reframe that, or same with if you win by 30, if you win by 1 point, it's kind of there's so much in this to unpack. I just love that you have made me think about it like critically, because it's really, and it's such a defining aspect of everyone's life on a day today? Because we all have, or we don't all have, goals we like to achieve on a, within a certain hour or day or week. It's kind of what everyone, it's how we go through our lives on a day to day.
So let's talk about that for a second as well. For you, where you are now, career or life, all the things, how do you set goals for yourself? Like, what is that process for you? And then how do you try to hold yourself accountable to those goals, whether they go down the path and direction you thought initially or not?
Right. That's a very, very good question. I think there's survival goals initially that kind of have to be met, whether that's through whatever financial means you need or even relationships. Those are kind of like the base life goals. And then beyond that, for me, creatively, I don't know. Because I've got my hands in a lot of different things. I think what we haven't even touched on is another big part of my life is I'm co-owner of a restaurant in Pasadena. So I've got that whole. It's a creative environment as well for me, an outlet. It's incredibly rewarding and challenging. And if you want to get into success metrics on restaurants, that's a whole other podcast. So yeah, it's creatively, I've got it's almost compartmentalized because I have, projects that a whole list of projects that I have kind of on a list with my brother. I've got another writing collaborator back home in Calgary, Alberta. And then I've got whatever just comes at me, not even knowing about it, auditions that come up and opportunities that happen that way. And then I have my own little theater company here in LA where it's like, okay, well, what do we want to do for the next year? And then it's a matter of just kind of putting this calendar together, laying it on top of what's happening in my personal life, and then being fully open to an opportunity to say, hey, you need to go somewhere for a month to work on this specific thing, so everything has to go on hold. So it's basically just being completely open to anything happening.
Okay, so that being said, as someone who has learned to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and someone who for my whole childhood and adulthood has been very I have a written planner, I have my to-do list, write everything down, make sure you cover it, make sure I'm on top of things. As a military spouse, but also had to then, and as a business owner, learn to be okay, there's just some things I'm going to wake up and the whole day can change perspective and my whole calendar could change. And that still gets me sometimes. So for you, how do you manage these different creative outlets, these different things you are working on, the restaurant, the projects, the flights, the personal stuff, and be on top of it while not stressing out the okay, I also have to just be comfortable if things pop up and be able to change my schedule quickly.
Right. I think what I've landed on over, several years of trying to juggle so many things is just trusting that it's all going to work out and try not to get wrapped up into the I was actually listening to what Ryan had talked about on your previous podcast, letting go of perfection, and just just getting things done. And sometimes that's just enough. If you just, it's just incremental gains. Like for me, it's just making sure all boxes are checked no matter what, and just moving forward as best I can. And again, just trusting that that you will find a way through. And that doesn't mean that it's all going to be great or it's all going to turn out the way you want it. It's just that some things are probably not going to be exactly how you wanted them to turn out. And that's usually fine. But I think it's also, I think that perspective, I mean, the 30-year-old version of me would have a completely different answer and would be freaking out and saying, no, it has to be this way. I wake up at 5 a.m. I go to the gym for an hour and I come back and I just kick ass until noon. And then I take the perspective I have now is just like, don't try as hard.
Do you think there was
let go?
Do you think there was a moment where that shift happened for you, or do you think it was a gradual, just like trying to push against the like, no, it has to be this way, and being like, okay, this kind of still worked out, I can loosen up?
Can't really define a moment, but I think you probably just reach you just get exhausted. You just get exhausted and you just let things go, or let the pressure of having to make it perfect, or what your idea of what it was. You just kind of like, definitely being, my daughter just turned 16. Definitely her coming into my life becoming a parent changes your outlook on everything. And prioritizing your time, your whole concept of time has changed, because you've given birth to a clock, and 16 years just has flown by. And she has definitely just made things seem either more important or less important, depending on how they involve her. What was the question?
No, you're good. What I will say is, I've never heard someone refer to like having a child as you've given birth to a clock. I really enjoy that one. I'm gonna use that. Like when people say, I'm like, I'm doing it.
I will say that's not an original Firla-ism. That was from I don't even know the writer. It was a op-ed piece in the New York Times that I read almost 16 years ago. But it did really make me think. I mean, I don't remember other specifics of the piece, but it really hit me, because it's your whole concept of time just is reframed, because especially early on as a parent, you just have less time in general, because you're not sleeping.
Sleep.
Yeah, but you're there are milestones that you set obviously with birthdays, but that definitely threw me, but also just the whole concept of time, I think, is also really wrapped into what this idea of success and goals, because especially as you get older, again, going to a sports sports mentality. When you're in the second half of a game, no, I'm not comparing this to middle age at all, but when you're in the second half of a game, you look up and say, oh, okay, we're 5 points down, but we've got like 10 minutes left. Is way different than being at the start of a game where there's 5 minutes off the clock. Yeah, we're down 10. We got plenty of time. You just feel it's impossible not to feel that aspect of time kind of affect your your timeline or perceived timeline of the goals you've set and how much time you have left on that, and then you get more specific about what goals you want to really chase, and that's impossible. You can't. The 30-year-old version of me would not even be thinking about that.
So you've brought up a few. I love your basketball analogies as a sports person. Love them. But I am going to say this because I recently read a book called, it's about being more like Walt Disney. Be like Walt. Yeah. Awesome book. I'm still in the middle of reading it.
Nice.
But it's actually, which I did not know until I started reading the book, it was written by the founder of the Orlando Magic.
No way.
And and do you know why the Orlando Magic is named the Magic?
Do you? Well, I know there's some kind of, obviously, the Disney and Disney World connection. I don't know the specifics of it though, so I'm fascinated. So in the book, he goes into how he started looking into starting this basketball team. It was going to be in Florida, and they decided on Orlando, and he just was immersed in the Orlando Disney culture, and he had always been fascinated by Walt Disney and the kind of culture he created and how everyone feels when they're in that environment. And being in Orlando, and when he was in Orlando, he's like, even outside of Disney World, the people in the community, are immersed in this feeling of community and love and support and all this stuff. And he's like, it's magic. That magic from what Walt had created and what Disney is immersed into the community. And it was this certain magic that happened. And he's like, so because of the magic that Walt Disney World created in Orlando, I named the team Magic. And I was like, that makes 100% sense now that you say it. But all the years I've heard the team name, I'm like, didn't connect it. I'm like, oh, that's a cool name. Okay. It's the extension of the Magic Kingdom. I think they should have named their team after Magic Johnson, though. They're like, we're just gonna all play like Magic, and it'll be great. But no, that makes total sense. Although I still don't. I still don't love it as a team name. But I have to cheer for Orlando right now because they're playing the Detroit Pistons, and if they won the first game, which they were not expected to, and if they beat Detroit, it makes Boston's chances a lot better for a finals appearance.
The domino effect.
There we go. Yeah.
So I want to go back to earlier. You mentioned your restaurant and being a co-founder of your restaurant. So what made you decide, in the mix of acting and writing and all the things, that starting a restaurant and co-founding this restaurant was something you wanted to do?
Well, it's something I've always been into, food and wine, and even starting out in Toronto, every actor has the story about, you were waiting tables and then you got your role and then that was it. So I wanted to be that cliche. So I was working in restaurants in Toronto, but what I quickly discovered is that I actually love the hospitality industry. And there's a lot of similarities between, entertaining someone for a dinner party or at a restaurant and entertaining someone on stage or on screen. And then especially, and the stories that are told through food and wine have definitely they can have the same narratives as, if you look at them as an art form, that translates. So that's always been a huge part of my life, and I love to cook. I do love wine, both as a beverage and also intellectually. And Top Chef is like my favorite show on television, and it has been for years. It's like the best. So I'd always had this idea. It's like, one day I know I will probably, be a part of a restaurant. I had an opportunity early in Toronto to help open a place there, but I was like, yeah, and you know what? I'm just doing the acting thing now. I don't need to do the restaurant stuff. But this one basically came out of, I was just freshly separated. My ex and I had decided that this was probably going to be it. And I just really needed something to do that would get me out of the house, engaged in a community, and not just kind of waiting around for the next acting gig. So this came around, and a chef I knew in Pasadena was opening a new location, and I basically said, let me help you. And that was almost exactly 11 years ago. And now here we are. We're kind of, it's always challenging, but our restaurant is right on the border of Altadena, which is where the Eden fire was. So we lost a huge part of our community, and we haven't fully rebounded since then, for obvious reasons. So we're still, right now is probably the most challenging. Like, for us, it's even more challenging than what we had to do to survive COVID. So anyway, but that's another tangent. But the decision to do it was, again, it came out of necessity and survival first, and then creatively it was just like a perfect fit for me. And it's been, that's where I do cabaret shows there. I produce the jazz concerts that we host. It's an incredible creative outlet for me. That's where my theater company has done productions. I do all the marketing, which it's been like a crash course in marketing. I do 2 newsletters a week. It's kind of, it's, again, knowing that I wanted to do this early on kind of made that leap easier for me. But it is something that you cannot, operating a restaurant is something you can't do half-assed. You have to be full ass. You can't take your eye off the ball, because it's, in some ways it's more competitive, especially in this town, more competitive than trying to be an actor or a writer. It's the same kind of thing, and it's a relentless operation that you just need to stay on top of. But it's a great challenge. It's been, it's been very rewarding. And because we're a neighborhood restaurant, it's tied in with this community that I've really been a part of for a decade now.
Well, one thing you brought up as well in sharing that was the fires and how the community has been affected. And you can feel in everything you're talking when it comes to restaurant and even other stories previously, you being very community oriented and focused in serving those individuals. So, like COVID was a black swan event. I mean, I could even say it was worse than black swan. Like no one could ever. That was in no one's scenario case.
Yeah.
And then the you come out of that in a time where a lot of businesses starting did not survive. A lot of brick and mortar restaurants did not survive. And then a few years later, this happens, and losing that community, losing part of the business revenue, I could only imagine, at least some part. Was your mindset different in the aspect of you're like, okay, well, we survived COVID, like bootstraps up, we got this. There's somewhat like if we could do COVID, we could handle this, or like what was your mindset as that happened, and then trying to figure out that path? I don't want to say necessarily like path forward from that, but the mindset around that to also be like, yeah, okay, like bump in the road. How do we keep going, and how do we make sure the community knows and the staff knows, like, we're good, don't overly stress?
Yeah, it's the initial, I mean, it was I don't even know. We just kind of, we didn't have time to think in some ways. We were shut down by the health department for a week just because the water in the neighborhood was not usable or anything. So we couldn't open it until they had finished that problem. And then it was just, it's my business partner is very resilient and stubborn, almost to a fault. So he always just kind of finds a way to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
We knew it was, and it still is, a very specific challenge, as specific as COVID was. However, the issue with being almost collateral damage to the aftermath of the fires is the short-term memory of everyone. Basically, if you're not near those areas, Altadena or the Palisades, you wouldn't even. It doesn't really affect your day to day anymore. After the first month, there was like this flood of support. Everyone's like, we're going to make sure you guys get through this, but it's not sustainable. And we knew that, it's like, oh man, business is booming right now, but let's wait until summer and see what happens and see see where things are. So it's just been, I hate using the word pivoting because I just think it's overused. Except in basketball, I'm a huge fan of pivoting in basketball. But it's just been sometimes a week-to-week thing where you just have to change things on the fly and adapt and tighten things up when you need to, and then it's a small business, and but we've somehow still found a way. So it's just, again, keeping it calm, trying not to overreact and trusting that we will find a way. But with COVID, it was different because everyone was going through it. With the fires, it's just the people who were directly affected who really are remembering this and experiencing it still. I mean, we have a lot of regulars who are just moving back to the neighborhood A lot of regulars who will not move back. They've already, moved. Some of them out of Los Angeles. And also with COVID, there was a ton of government support that helped. With this, there was a little bit, and some other funds that helped, but not in the same scale. So yeah, so we're still figuring it out, and like I said, it's almost like a week to week challenge. So.
And one thing I want to bring up too, because believe it or not, we're getting towards the end of time.
No, we're not. We haven't talked about anything.
No, there's so much. I do want to talk about your acting career a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
So for you, what has it been like, the journey of getting different roles, but then also wearing the hat of scriptwriter and screenwriter and these different titles? Do you look at roles you might be taking or auditioning different, or when you're on set, do you have a different perspective, do you think, about a character than your fellow actors?
Great question. I think it's a project to project thing. And for me, especially with comedy, I kind of evolved into an on-set punch-up writer in a way, or just, I'm not, so I like to think of myself, I love improv, but I'm terrible at it. If someone asks me and I have friends who are genius improvisers who ask me to do, just come try it. Come be a guest on my improv show, like back in Toronto. And I was just terrible, mortifying, some of the worst, talking about failure. That kind of improv, not good. But improv within like a structured scene, coming up with additional lines or alternate lines especially with comedy, because it's just about you need to get a laugh at the end of a scene. You need a moment to go out on, to cut away from. I probably had a different perspective when it comes to the onset stuff. It's like, no, let's find the best way to end this scene, or what's a better reaction to this line. So yeah, it definitely has influenced on that with the comedy stuff in particular. But that also did help with some of my stuff, like especially on Suits. It's it was pretty much, these are the words, say them, because they're well written. But you get into scenes with, like my scenes with Rick Hoffman, he would go off script because he's incredible. And it's like, well, I can't just, if he's going to say that, I can't say my next line because that doesn't make sense. I have to do something. So again, it's finding out what the boundaries are in any given creative environment and playing along within those. And usually once you develop trust with the people who are actually on the line for making those decisions, then you can play a little more, or just, a lot of the times, like especially with Suits, it's like, no, let's just, the script's great. Let's just do that. You don't need to come up with other stuff. With some of the sitcoms, it's, again, dependent on the process. It's like, okay, we're going to do one exactly how it's written. Let's get it, cover that, and then you guys can do whatever you want. Sometimes it's that. It's specific on day-to-day, scene-to-scene stuff. But no,
Talking.
being a writer and also having experience doing live comedy. I mean, I've kind of done. I don't say that I've done stand up. I did a double act with my brother, which is like stand up with the safety net. Because if a joke bombs, you can just blame, oh, it's his fault. I'm the straight man here. He's supposed to be the funny guy. But figuring that out live, it helps again with failure, because the more you bomb, the more immune you become to it, and then you just don't see it as like a something fatal. It's just no, it's just it's like, oh, that was terrible, but I'm fine, and let's go be terrible but better next time.
One word you just mentioned in that story too is boundaries. So for you, how do you communicate or understand the boundaries of like, this is where I can give some feedback or push a little bit on making sure the character's line hits this way, or, positioning, whatever it might be, versus going, okay, I can't do this, and kind of navigating that as well, where you're like, okay, I can or I can't, and honoring the boundaries without coming off in any time of like, no, like I do this too, I know what I'm doing.
Right. I think, on set, it's purely, I think, a function or defined by what role you have in there. If you're a series regular, you're given more of a long leash. If you're a guest star coming in, you're more just kind of fitting into a machine that's already running. And then, but that being said, it's still, it all comes down to, I think, just trust. And if building trust with the writers and the showrunner. And once that is established, then you can really collaborate, which is like the dream kind of environment on any set, is to have, because most scenes in any given show, whether they're drama or comedy, are two-handers. That's like, I don't know, 80% of any show. It's like two characters talking. And then you have a group scene or some kind of action sequence where there's more people or what have you, or some event. But most of the time it's two-handers. So I have my idea of how that scene should play out. The other actor has their idea of how that scene should play out. The director has their idea. And then there's the writers who came up with it. And I think early on, I held too tightly to my version of the scene, and like, no, this is what I want to do, and wasn't as open to what other people were bringing, and that it's great to come with as many ideas as possible, but you also have to be open and not over prepared. It's almost like you need to wait and see what everyone else brings to the party, and then together you're making this thing come alive in the best form. Because otherwise you're just, and I've had it. I remember very early on one of my first series in Canada. In the first episode we were shooting, I had this very specific version of how this performance is going to be in the scene, and I would not let go of it, and I couldn't get it to where I wanted it to be, and I actually needed to like just time out and said, I just need to walk away give me like 2 minutes. I need to get out of my head, and then came back and just kind of, you just start actually listening to who you're in a scene with. and just letting it come out that way, as opposed to forcing your vision onto something. Yeah. That probably made sense in some language.
It did.
Not English.
You're not giving yourself enough credit here. All your answers have made sense. And I love them because they tell stories. You have tangible stories to go with it. You're doing great. You've done great.
Amazing.
Well, and success. Believe it or not, you have achieved podcast guest success. Say that 5 times fast.
I will.
And that being said, believe it or not, we're at the end. I feel like we're not. Yeah, I know. We can really keep going. There's so much more I want to talk about.
I've got like 5 pages of notes I haven't even touched.
No, all my original questions, none of them were touched.
But I love that. I mean, there's actually no, there is one thing. So another thing I do is I teach sitcom writing online for Toronto Film School, and the first week of the first course I teach, I introduce students to this concept of daring to suck. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a book called Dare to Suck that this guy wrote. I forget his name. I owe him a lot because I recommend his book to everybody. But it was...
So he owes you a lot, not the other way around.
Exactly. But it was actually the band Aerosmith came up with this idea in their band meetings. And somehow Dan Brown, the writer of the Da Vinci Code, had talked to Steven Tyler about it randomly. And Steven Tyler was talking about his process and daring to suck and how their band would meet. And basically the challenge was to bring in your worst ideas possible. And we're just going to jam and it's going to suck. But there's going to be one thing in that there's going to be a dude looks like a lady that's going to come out of that session, or love in an elevator. Something is going to come out of us daring to suck. And I know it's also a motto that some Second City performers have used before they do an improv set. So let's just dare to suck and see what happens. So that's another key to success that I wanted to throw in there.
I like that. I'm gonna start saying that. Now you're gonna get me putting that in there. Well, thank you, Brandon, for all of your insight today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
It has been wonderful, and a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation include trust that all is going to work out and just get it done. Brandon brought this up in the beginning, and I think it's really important to identify that in the end of the day, it is going to work out. It might not be, as Brandon said, the way you initially thought of it. It might not be the end result you thought it was going to be. It could end up being way better. It could also lead you down that path to where you're supposed to be and where you're supposed to and how you're supposed to show up. The other thing he brought up, which I thought was so amazing, are people in your life give you a perspective that you're not going to get otherwise, right? He talked about individuals, talked about his daughter and time and life experiences and just the people he surrounds himself with throughout different stories Brandon has shared today that made me really go, people give us the perspective we have through communication, through how they show up for us. That all shapes our own perspective in life and time and what is important, right? The comment he brought up about when you have a child, you give birth to a ticking clock. All of that is the perspective around time and how to utilize it and what is important. And I think that was so important to not just how he shows up, but how we should all identify how we want to show up and understand, take note. Who are the people around you that are giving you the perspective? And is it the perspective you want? Or are there different conversations that need to be had? As well as Build trust with the people you work with to be able to collaborate the best. I love how Brandon brought this up in his stories about his acting experience and being on sets. Is like, if you want to be heard and your perspective and notes, understand the room you're in. Not every room you're in is going to want that. But when you build relationships and foster that relationship, you will be heard clearer and you will be able to collaborate better. And lastly, I want to challenge everyone to dare to suck. Take one thing today and this week and practice dare to suck. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, actor Brandon Firla. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.